everybody, and welcome to the 107th edition of the Chronicles of Podcast. And these right here are the Chronicles of Timothy Burgard. It is I, the bearded brummy Jamie, and joining me as always, is this man right here.
Oh, he didn't say handsome for the first time. He's growing though. We love it, guys and girls. That's what we like to see. It's the Scotsman Tom. And, you know, as you can see, the gingerness is getting ever more ginger as we fly through these weeks. But yes, welcome to the Chronicles of Podcast. Hit it!
Hi there. You're about to enjoy the Chronicles of Tom and Jamie.
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Mann.
Hi guys, my name's Annabelle Knight.
Hello, this is Becky Baldwin.
Hello, I'm Chesney.
Hey, what's up everyone? This is Braden from Say We Can Fly.
Hi, this is Tim Burgard, and I'm a guest on the Chronicles of Podcasts with my new best friends. What are your names again? Tom and Jamie. There you go. And so hope you have a good time listening to my voice, and believe me, it could have gone worse. All right, bye.
I don't know, I was going to say Bulgar, so I don't want to start, doing French out of nowhere. So.
Join us because we bring you the Chronicles of Timothy Burgard. This week, we are joined by Timothy Burgard, an artist, a storyboard artist who has worked on comic books, television, commercials, video games, theme parks, and some of Hollywood's biggest movies. Tim's credits are a thing that just needs to be seen to be believed. Like, it's absolutely phenomenal. He's worked on products like The Incredible Hulk, Jurassic World, The Son of Mask, and even the legendary Superman Lives, which, I cannot wait for people to hear this. I'm so excited for you to hear this interview.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you pinch yourself and you go, really? We're having this conversation?
Yeah.
It's great. It's absolutely fantastic. For those that are curious, that watch the YouTube, Tim just mentioned it, but that's his garden of succulents behind him. And what a vast array of succulents they are. No, this is absolutely amazing, with a really mind-blowing revelation, shall we say, towards the end about the movie Jumanji. So you definitely need to stick around for that. But it is a day after tomorrow as well. There's just Mars Attacks. There's so many movies in there and TV shows. You're like, fucking hell, dude. And he's still going. And he's still going. It's a conversation for the ages, shall we say. So we hope that you enjoy. But Jamie!
Yes, sir.
Do you happen to have, how is it going again? Any final words at all?
Just a massive thank you to Mr. Burgard for taking the time out to talk to us. Sir, as I said, your credits are 1.5 miles long. We barely got to scratch the surface, so hopefully we can do this again in the future. But thank you so much. People, you are really going to enjoy this one.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, interviewing this week, it's Timothy Burgard. And for some reason, you are in front of a hell of a lot of cactuses for some reason, or cacti, I believe, isn't it?
Succulents, actually. This is my side yard.
That's awesome. That one that on the left looks like its tentacles come out the ground. That's cool as hell.
Yeah, it looks like a seed thing, like kelp or whatever. I had a friend who described it as a Dr. Seuss garden.
I like that.
That's awesome.
I like that. Well, first things foremost, Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Feel free to step in if I kind of like buffer for a little bit. No. I'll be making the noise. Okay. That's what's funny. It's funny. I ate every day or every week at a sushi bar, and I would listen to people speak Japanese, and I hear soka. And I'll go, what does soka mean? Everybody says that. And then I found out later it means
That's amazing.
That's brilliant.
I'll just start doing that randomly from now on.
Basically, what we do is I like to do a nice little introduction, introduce you into the show sort of thing, and then we will bombard the living hell out of your questions. How does that sound, my friend?
All right, sounds good.
Beautiful. Right, let's get this underway. Ladies and gentlemen, today we bring you another incredible guest. We often say on this show the people behind the camera are just as, if not more important than the people in front of them. Today's guest is a storyboard artist who's worked on some of the biggest movies and shows in modern pop culture, from Stargate to Batman and Robin to Thor, Hawkeye, and beyond. Boys and girls, put your hands together as we bring you a man who I'm going to say is royalty in his profession. Join us because we bring you the Chronicles of Timothy Burgard.
Oh, okay. You even got my last name almost right.
Ah, damn it. What did I do?
You kind of went with the T instead of the D. You went Timothy
I think
Burgard.
it was my voice just going all funny on me because I was talking for so long.
That's okay. I went through the whole thing with my family members about how my name has been mispronounced because it's Alsatian. It's on the border of Germany and France, and depending on how you pronounce your D's and your G's, you're going to get different results. So,
but Tim, let's a question I like to ask everyone since we get started. I know it was a few years ago now, but how was the pandemic for you? How was your last few years?
It actually, personally, it was pretty bad. Work-wise, I've come out better than some, but it was 4 years. But I ended up working on a couple of movies that definitely went through the whole, remote working kind of deal. But here's the thing: even before the pandemic, the type of work I do, which is storyboarding, there's other reasons why we were working remote even before then. Okay, it used to be they would want you in the same office as the director and the art department, sometimes right in the art department, because first of all, you got the art department has all of the resources like reference and location photos and all that kind of stuff. And also because the director kind of knows where you are, he doesn't have to schedule a meeting. He can essentially just walk from a meeting on his way to another meeting and come in and talk to you, But I don't know if you know this, but just because you're working for, the final movie says, Warner Brothers or Disney or whatever, but I'm working for an almost independent production company. Sometimes it's the director's production company. Other times it's like some other thing, like your producer has his own production company, and they're like renting equipment and room for everybody that's there. Nobody buys a copy machine, like that. I mean, they have their home. I'm sure they have their home office, but when you get a crew of people working on one thing, they want to get like a big space, And most of the time these days, it's not even on the studio lots anymore, because they'll charge more than you can get. I worked once on Rodeo Drive, which is like one of the most expensive properties in Beverly Hills, and yet somehow that was cheaper than working on a movie lot. Our lunches were very expensive. You walk out the door and you're looking at Mercedes-Benz and like Rolls Royces. I think we see a couple, and then and women with extravagant facial alterations. I call them the duck people because they essentially they think that they're making their lips bigger. They're making them wider. If you look at them from the side, they look like duck bills, And those are the people in line with you when you're out there trying to get lunch, And but the remote thing, though, I mean, essentially, we're basically at home now, paying for our own toilet paper and snacks. They don't have to pay those anymore. And my bill on those actually has gone up quite a bit. we have a thing called box rental, which means that, yeah, if I'm working with my own equipment and everything else, then you got to pay for my, my rental of my computers, on my software, all that kind of stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But I honestly, I think they should be paying, especially in heat waves and stuff like that. I think they should be paying for air conditioning and water. It's like I flush my toilet a lot more, working at home than I do over there. But the pandemic, getting back to the pandemic, getting into this remotely, it didn't make a lot of difference.
Okay.
Business wise, it makes difference because of how many people how many productions can actually be going on during this whole thing, where they had to be careful. Now in pre-production, you don't have to worry as much. You don't have crew people carrying ladders around or whatever, and have to do all of that. And I assume that in a small office, if everybody's vaccinated, they may not even have to do, masks and stuff like that. But on the other hand, since this is all about me, not necessarily the business, the sad thing is that it came at a bad time for my mom and dad, who are octogenarians. My dad was at the beginning of this thing and turned 90, and they ended up isolated. And I'm about the closest one to them, and I'm about an hour's drive from where they live. So that whole thing ended up kind of like going down the sinkhole, and eventually, as of fact, would be this year, we lost my dad, my mom the year before.
Wow.
But it had everything. And if you know people who are isolated like that, that and unfortunately in California, one of the things is we're like a freeway city. Everything is spread out. So being there enough times to really, get them out of the house or whatever, they just ended up being couch potatoes, and that was essentially the death sentence right there. Just because their bodies atrophied, literally that their bodies and their minds atrophied. And that more than anything else was the problem. And we're coming out of that now. My brother did a little heroic thing where he brought them at their worst, brought them to live with him. And he was starting a new relationship at the same time. Luckily, his girlfriend is a registered nurse. I think she's actually a head nurse. And so she was like godsend to us. It was like, we could feel more comfortable and try and visit as many times as we could. So that was the worst thing about this. Coming out of this, however, we go right into some strikes,
Yeah.
And yeah, we could get together, but we don't like each other. And they're getting plenty of exercise. I see them, walking the roads up and down, Disney Studios on my way to my comic book shop, so it's but luckily in the last couple of years I worked on for Netflix. Actually, it's the weirdest thing. I think these are both for Netflix. A Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy, and Bad Boys 4. And have come out yet. I'm sure it's fine. I can say that I worked on those. And I worked on actually the Marvel stuff. I worked remotely before the pandemic. It just took this long. I mean, I think the Hawkeye came out even before the pandemic. Secret Invasion came out just recently.
Yes.
So some of the stuff, it's been a while, some things came out almost immediately, like The Woman King came out. I think like worked on that, and then like a couple months later it's there, and but a couple of movies like what's his face, it'll come to me. But there's a couple of movies that are, and then here's the cool thing. During the not the pandemic, but in the strike, which has been going on for 6 to 9 months, depends on who you're asking. I got contacted by somebody I had worked with before, first on a movie, an adaptation of the anime Blood, the Last Vampire. And he's contacted me on a few things since then. And I worked with him once before on a Universal Studios Florida ride featuring the classic monsters. And I just finished, guess a couple months ago, finished working with them on a brand new theme park. What is it? You know what? It's such a generic name, like the Great American Theme Park or something like that. Generic. When you hear it's generic, I can make up something better just off the top of my head. The Great. I don't know. It's like in Oklahoma, and but it was a fun ride. I got to work on that, and that was not in the film business, so I wasn't stepping on anybody's toes by working on there, and that kept me going. So, I'm hoping that things will. I'm at retirement age, and I really don't want to for the next 10 years. But like if you don't use me, I guess I have to come up with something else, But and did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just want to say I'm so sorry for your loss. First, losing your parents can not be pleasant in any way, shape, or form. I've never known anything like that yet. So,
oh no. I mean, the amazing thing, and we have to acknowledge that they've been with us such a long period of time, more than many people have their parents. So we were blessed that way, and that, it wasn't pleasant at the time, but it was going to happen anyway. And we try to make them as comfortable as possible. So we basically feel like we did the right thing, and there was not anything else we could do. And also the people that you meet, people I know all the time, I meet all the time, and they not only they share their condolences, but I find out they've gone through the same thing I did, and I'm saying, oh, okay, yeah. And I'm much more aware when things like that are happening now, because it's a universal thing.
Yeah, it affected a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and unfortunately, a lot of those were not positive ways. But let's take this story back to the start. A question I always like to ask our guests: what did young Master Tim want to be when he was growing up? Has it always been art as a focus for yourself, or was it, I don't know, astronaut at one point?
Well, you know what? I think the first time I ever answered somebody that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a mad scientist.
Right answer.
I wanted to be Victor Frankenstein. Good. I love monsters, and I said, oh, that's a job. Monsters. But it's sort of a weird thing. It's sort of I kind of, whatever the set of circumstances is that just had me drawing and continually drawing and enjoying drawing. It was a matter of like, I'm going to be drawing, so let's find something that, and I got into comic books pretty early, before I even could really read them, because there was always the comic strips in the newspaper at a time when the actual newspaper, it wasn't like the 40s or anything, when you had a newspaper that you could taller than most children when you put it from something that anyway, and so eventually, I was thinking I was going to be like a cartoonist or a comic book artist, and that's sort of where I aimed for. But I did go to college, and there were other things around, not a lot in Southern California. In Orange County, it's about like an hour north. There probably were a lot of other things I could have been doing, but I was sort of in a suburban, a Republican, paradise to some, stale and I'm out of time, where the 50s never died, kind of thing. And, and so wonderful place to grow up when you're a kid and everything. But, see the light, that's the light coming from my other computer. See, so every once in a while you dim it. Folks, if you're watching this, know that my light bill I didn't miss payment of my light bill, but anyway, so I was drawing. I enjoyed drawing monsters. I started drawing, superheroes, and then as puberty approached, I decided I better learn how to draw girls too, and I just kind of followed that up, trying to there's a great Ray Bradbury once came to our college, and I know he didn't write this line, but it really resounded with me. It says, "Follow your bliss," and if it's something that is interesting to you, you should go ahead and do it, even if it's in, I'm a storyboard artist right now. I didn't know anything about storyboarding. They taught us a little bit about film, not really. It was like an elective. But the only artists who were there working in the field were doing, posters, full on painted posters. I thought, if I want to do stuff, I better learn how to paint, and, but I was more into telling stories. I was more into, the narrative, drawing. I like drawing, pretty good, but, figures in motion, and figure drawing, but that's sort of where I'm mostly attuned to things, and I started being a fan of animation and films and stuff like that. Eventually, you just, by osmosis, you start picking some of that up. Then the techniques start coming in. The more you're into other things, and I assisted somebody I met at a science fiction fantasy art show. His name was Rick Hoberg, and he grew up in the same city I did, but not so close that we would have gone to school together. And he ended up working with Russ Manning on the Tarzan strips, Tarzan was my favorite character, so I was really impressed. And he ended up asking me to help him do background stuff on some comic books that he was inking for DC Comics, and cleaning up storyboards. We call it putting it on model. He would get close enough in his own style, and then I would go in and I would work with the animation studio's model sheets and make them more exact. Because in those days, they used the storyboards for more than just telling the story. They were the layout people were working off of them, and even the background design people were working off of them. When the storyboard artist was working ahead of everybody else in the art department, and so we had to be nice and tight, And also, since I knew how to ink. At that time, Xeroxes, nice as they were not good with subtlety. You do something in pencil and you'll get like 50% of whatever that is, unless you crank it up, and then maybe you'll get all of your pencil, but your pages will be smudgy and gray,
Yeah.
And so the way I worked with Rick is like, we're going to do this in such a way that, the worst copy machine possible will still get a real clean thing. And that actually had to film, because those crappy copy machines were still there, Now you can work on anything. You can work with like a gumdrop, and scanners will pick that up, or you don't even work with physical tools anymore. You do all digital, and everything if you need to print anything, every print is an original. There is no fading over making a copy of a copy of a copy anymore.
It's interesting what you're saying then about with animation, how they basically just used those storyboards to go toward, because at the end of the day, that's a drawing. Animation, that's also a drawing. So let's just use it. Why not? Save some time.
Yeah, I've seen some badly produced shows that I worked on where they sent out everything to like South Korea, I think at the time, but they were going to like the Philippines and all kinds of stuff. And they use, and I found out later that the cell paint they use, half of it was just house paint. That it wasn't just your latex, coffee cream vanilla whites and mixed with sky blue or whatever, but I saw my own drawings. It's like you could see my style of pencil drawing on the screen. It was like the turnarounds, the model sheets that I did, they were there. It was like, and then they would start to move. And then at one point, I think they just, how Terry Gilliam used to take like the just photos or drawings and just cut them up into pieces and then make each part kind of move separately. They did that with my drawings. They just had they cut off an arm and then they had it pinned, and would walk, it would do this. It would just, the arm would just sideways. That's the way to show it. It would do that. And I go, oh my God, this is so cheap. I think a high school student could do better than this. It was so horrible.
So you were saying that, so was going from comics to working on animation storyboards, was that like a really smooth transition then, if there's a lot of similarities in the work?
The physical drawing was very much like comic books, except that anytime you're doing storyboards, I do stuff purely for me sometimes, because the quality of the storyboard work, well, with the exception I made with animation at the time, where they wanted to reuse the drawings or draw over the drawings or whatever, the quality of the drawing is kind of like second or third next to your pacing, your composition. In animation, it's acting, you're acting, the way you have the characters, emote, and all that kind of stuff. In comic books, the artwork is the product. It is what's sell that, plus the writing, I guess, so I didn't have to work as hard on the drawing for animation. However, I had to know the tricks, and especially for TV animation, as opposed to now where a lot of animation is CGI, and the difference between 2D animation, even going back to Disney, is creating senses of depth and tricking the eye, to recreate something that isn't actually happening. A motion picture camera can move any way possible, in physical space. Time and space and weight and mass, are the only things that you have to worry about. In a digital virtual camera could be literally anything. And in fact, you have to be more careful in digital camera work, because it can be anything. It could take you out of the story if it's so weird that you don't know what's going on. and but in a 2D animation, the camera the only movement it makes is this. It goes up and down. It's closer to the art or further away from the art, where you'd see, maybe it's fields. It's like a 6 field. It's probably small. It's probably just for a close-up. If you have like many characters, like playing baseball or something, or football, your football, But if you have like a whole field and you got all these old characters running around and stuff, it's like an 18 field. And so you would have the camera would be up to be able to see all of that more. And so you have to, create optical illusions sometimes. If you wanted to do a pan, well, your perspective is changing every time you do that kind of thing right there, right? So you have to do a background that looks like it's warped. But it isn't really, because you're only seeing a piece of it at a time as you're going along, or rather as it's moving in front of the camera, because the artwork is moving, not the camera's going up and down. The artwork is what's moving. And that's what they have also, like in Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones and all of that old Hanna-Barbera stuff. It's called a cycle, a background cycle. And that's like a tracking shot where you're moving and the thing is moving with you, right? So they basically, you see the same, in Scooby-Doo, you see the same scary portrait on the wall, or the same, suit of armor or whatever 15 times. They're running in place, but the cycle of the background is going behind, right? So you're trying all these different things. And the most expensive one, of course, is animating the background the same way you were animating the foreground, in which case, that's full animation. You're basically, that's for like a Disney movie or something like that, like a full-on feature, So I had to learn all those tricks. Once I got into live action, it was more about learning lensing, what the difference is between a long lens and a wide lens. Long lens, the camera is physically much further away and everything is compact. So if I'm holding out a baseball, see how my hand is like, this is like a wide lens right now. My hand is taken over there. If I was holding out my hand, I don't know how to do this, right? I would hold out my hand full, and my hand would be the same size, relative to my body, holding out that baseball. That would be a long lens. And then there's this, or like that, Before there, comic book, all that. I learned composition. I learned timing. I learned all of that stuff. And the continuity. Don't skip around so that the audience says, wait a minute, what happened between that and that? So
I mean, just going back ever so slightly, you talked about style, and you talked about, obviously, with like pencil style stuff. How did you find your style particularly? How do I know that's a Tim? I don't want to ruin your surname, but how do I know that's like your work sort of thing? The way, how did you find how you've got your style, basically?
Okay, I'll answer your question, but don't worry about saying Tim Burgard.
Okay. I don't know. I was going to say Burgard, so I don't want to start doing French out of nowhere. So.
Okay. If you're in, I'll say Lorraine. I don't know what to tell you, but for me, I'm okay. Anyway, it's weird because before they started putting the names of the artist and the writer or in a comic book, I was picking up who was drawing what and who was inking who, because I could see the style. Sometimes, of course, it's how, especially with the human body, how people approach that, facial expressions and stuff like that. You could definitely tell. Some are easier than others. I mean, Jack Kirby, it's a lot. It's easy to tell next to, say, Neil Adams or Bernie Wrightson or somebody like that, right? Some guys are kind of in the middle. I might be one of them, where you get a solid kind of figure and whatever, but it would change depending on who inked it. I felt like I was trying to be like Bernie Wrightson and Wally Wood, and it turned out that that was all in my finish. It's all in my inking. When I'm drawing, apparently according to one observer, I'm a little bit more like Archie comics. And I go, oh no, really? Up game, but I could tell, well, some people could tell, the same way I did, just by seeing it enough times. And then, but it's a little bit more difficult. Obviously, the people have influences too. I kind of wanted to draw. Actually, I started drawing. Remember Mad Magazine, Don Martin?
Mad Magazine.
Mad Magazine in the United States. It started along with EC Comics with all the horror comics and stuff like that. But all these guys, Wally Wood and all the same people who were doing the science fiction and fantasy and horror stuff were going over to work on the comedy stuff, and some of them were even better at the comedy, like Jack Davis and later days you got the guy who could do all the characters, Mort Drucker, and then you had that gang of idiots. But the guy had the weirdest style was Don Martin, and when he drew people's feet, it looked like it were hinged, looked like the toes were
Sounds horrific.
know what I'm talking about. So he had a very and I tried to actually copy him for a little bit, but I also liked Russ Manning, who did my favorite Tarzan comics. I also liked Wally Wood, and then Neil Adams and Bernie Wrightson and all these guys started coming up, and I try to pick things that I liked from them. I mean, and it continued. I mean, some brilliant people like Kevin Nolan and whatever, just stunned me with some of their, their style of rendering, and I'm trying to pick up where I can. Alex Toth, obviously, you probably heard of him. I've never had. I think George Bernard Shaw once wrote to somebody saying, "I'm sorry that this letter is so long, but I didn't have time to send you a short one."
That's awesome.
And so being that good and that you can get everything you want in an economy of drawing is something that I hope to learn more and more. But it's before I was just like rendering everything, and I'd learned in school that if you do that, foregrounds and backgrounds bend together. It all looks like a plate of noodles. You can't tell the subject from the background anymore.
Just before we start talking about some of the projects you've worked on, I would like to learn a bit more about what you actually do. So for anyone listening to this, we keep talking about storyboarding, but for those unaware, what is storyboarding? What's the best way to describe it?
I like to think of it as the visual blueprint for how a film looks on screen. It's a document, at least the way when you get away from animation, there's an added element to animation because you're basically the actor as well. You're acting. You use reference and stuff like that, but a lot of people, and it has something, and along those lines, it has commonality with comic books, because all the emotion, all the everything like that is coming from the animator and the storyboard artist, to come up with the mood and everything else, the flow. A lot of animation stuff is, they have a story to begin with, but the storyboard artists usually take the lead on what finally goes out on the screen. When you're working in live action storyboarding, it's more of a document on how to make the film. It's also pre-editing the film, because if you get the shots that are in the storyboard, generally you will have a movie. You will have all the scenes. Not always. There's a bit of there's a difference between doing 2D drawing that are static, meaning not moving, and in which case you're dealing with time, right? Because a drawing you can stare at a drawing for 5 minutes, right? You don't have that option in a film. You know, if there's some important detail that are in that drawing, you know, then they're obligated. Either you have to find a way of getting that information out in a different way, or it is actually a document of the movement of the camera and what is in front of the camera.
Okay.
And in live action, you basically do the difficult shots. Anything that has to do with people just talking like we are. I mean, if I were directing this and we were all together, you wouldn't be seeing, you know, just close-ups of us. I'd be doing over the shoulder shot, you know, a wider 3 shot. I would try and rake across one person to get the other two. I would try and, I would try and make it more interesting rather than what we call talking heads.
Yes.
And so with what I'm hired to do, actually, my job can span a lot of different things, because I don't work just with the director. I sometimes work with the editor. I work with the supervising the second unit directors, like the visual effects people. I work with all these different people on specific things quite often. And every once in a while I'll work on something live action, like I just told you I worked on the theme park. You know, it had everything to do with the environment that the audience was going to be in. So the aspect ratio, you know, the squares and stuff, and your screen, it can be widescreen, IMAX, all of that changes depending on where the audience members are, right? And so storyboarding can be very specific on what you're trying to do. Visual effects, when I'm doing visual effects, it's more like animation than anything else, because there is no wiggle room. Whatever I do is what they're planning on doing. If I do live action stuff, it's dependent quite a bit on the director, on how he wants to capture something. Is he going to use a crane? Is he going to use drones? Is he going to push in with a camera? Or I'm trying, and for the most part, when I'm working with a director, I'm trying to give the director's vision. So we have a common set of film terminology that we can talk about it. And I can quite often just draw little drawings to say, do you mean this? And then they say, oh yeah, you know. And the occasion, some directors will draw a little something for me, you know. And unfortunately, I've had 1 or 2 directors who never learned perspective, and maybe they studied medieval tapestries, because that's the kind of perspective that they use.
So what is the process that goes into then? Is it here's the script, this is what we want you to do, go, or is it a lot more information?
It could be a lot or a little. I've been on a couple of films where I literally there wasn't a script, or I wasn't allowed to look at it. You know? What? Well, Kenneth Branagh and I worked on a sequence in Thor, the first movie, and they had an idea of doing a whole elaborate thing with a plane graveyard, past full jets and passenger planes, 747s, all that kind of stuff. And they were going to have a chase scene with Thor trying to get away from the big monster, which was the Destroyer, this big suit of armor, you remember? And it went on and on and on and on. It would have been like the major set piece of the whole damn movie, you know. And in the end, they just used about, if I were to time it out, I would say 3 minutes of it. And it was, and it wasn't even them really. It was like Thor's friends gang up on this guy, you know. And that was pretty much the way I boarded it. But I spent weeks on the thing, and the majority of that they decided later that we're going to use it. And I never saw a script, you know, and you know, and that happens a lot with directors that have a script, but they don't want to use, they for whatever reason they said, okay, this is not what we're doing, you know. And so they'll describe it to me, or sometimes they'll give me a shot list of what they want, which is essentially basically a written document of what I'm supposed to board. Sometimes I make my own shot list. If I'm working from a script, if somebody hands me a script, like they did in animation, they just handed me a script and told me to do boards. And so I would break down a script into a shot list, thumbnails, or if I kind of knew what I was doing or I had a good handle on what was going, I would just rough it out. And then I would get approval from the director or producer, whoever I was working with. And then I would go in and I would do finishes. And so, but it changes around a little bit. I mean, once in a while there's something weird. You know, if you work on a live action thing, I worked on a Marvel Universe stunt show. And I was working with a choreographer, you know. And so there was going to be these motorcycle gags. There's going to be these guys jumping off of whatever. And some of them are going to be on wires and flying and, you know, and so I was, you know, doing a representation of that. Obviously it was not that some of them were big and wide and it would have been from the view of somebody in the audience. But a lot of it was like, you had to be actually in the show to see it that way. But it describes to everybody that's going to be building the sets and the stunt people and everything else. It just shows them, okay, this is what we're doing. You know,
so it's crazy to think like you must, doing what you do, really influence the final product more than you'd really imagine. So, because especially if they're just saying, here's a script, go do what you want. But I suppose you're impacting that final product more than a lot of people might realize.
Well, sometimes what you're doing leads to the next thing. Now, there's a thing called coverage, right? And this is mostly in live action, where you set it up, you know, based on everything you want to do. But when you're actually there, first of all, you take into account the cinematographer. He may just want to do whatever he wants to do, in which case, you know throw the storyboards away. That's why when I see a live action thing, I'm sometimes surprised that I can recognize my work, because the general idea, and this is just general, it's not to say that it's the same for every situation with every director, but they get coverage. They basically say, we're going to do this scene close up, medium, and wide. And if you've heard the term that the movie is made in the editing room, that's very true. And so if you have a really good performance in close up, and the next scene you have a close up and a medium and a wide, probably you don't want to use the close up one. That might have been what I did. I might have went the other way, wide and then close up. But in the editing room, they may go close up and then wide, you know. And so, you know, I give them the one thing that they really need in the end for me is when I have to solve problems for them, or they need me to translate visually what they want to do, so everybody else on the set can be prepared for it and know what they want to achieve, right? So if there's a certain camera move and I capture that camera move, that probably is going to be in the final thing, because that's what they intended to do the whole time, right? But quite often I would get that shot, and then I'm supposed to do the shots before that and the shots after. And every once in a while, like on the movie The Patriot, it's like rebels, riding their horses down the hill, and there's gunfire and everything else. I had one, I knew that they were going to do some little sick things because I know it was in the script on some stuff, like the damage that cannonballs will do to, they actually had a thing where they had two cannonballs with a chain separating them, and you have this like an advancing army, and you shoot the cannonballs out. It's not just what the cannonballs themselves hit, it's everything that chain hits in between, right? So I never actually hurt an animal, but I decapitated a horse. Okay. A cannonball take out a horse's head on one of them. And they liked it so much they wrote it into the script, but they ended up not shooting it because it was well, they wouldn't have actually killed a horse.
No, I know what you mean, yeah.
It would have been a $500,000 shot or something. I don't know what it would cost to do that effect. In the end, they also can only do as much as they could afford. Maybe they would have loved to have had that, but so I do add stuff every once in a while that makes it in.
That's awesome.
But it's different than with animation or visual effects. When I work on visual effects, pretty much, if I don't get it right, they either have me do it right or they hire somebody else to do it right. It's the board is what they're going to do.
You got to storyboard on one of the greatest TV shows of all time, being The Simpsons. Now, that's one of my favorite shows ever. Was that a lot of pressure going into doing that? But you came in quite early, didn't you? Like 1989, I think it was, or something.
First 2 seasons.
Yeah. Okay. So when it began, basically. So do you feel like you've accredited to the success somewhat? And how come you're only there for a short while?
Oh, hell no. If you probably have seen the Tracy Ullman version of the show, yes. Right? So, it was wildly different looking. That was a show that almost broke my mind a little bit because I was putting a lot of shows on model, like however somebody would draw something or whatever. But Matt Groening's style is so weird. It's almost like drawing Escher figures, how this thing works, And the very first one I worked on was called Homer and Delilah. And it's the basic plot is, they go out to dinner, like a seafood place or whatever. Bart is like on the school newspaper or something. So he actually has a camera with him, but that's your backstory. And Homer is like getting up from the family to go to the bathroom or something. And he comes across a bachelor party and he starts dancing with the stripper. And
yes.
Bart,
I remember this on there. Yes.
Right now, in animation sometimes you work ahead of the designers. Now I had everything for Bart and Homer and all the main characters, but this was supposed to be a sexy girl done in a Simpson style. And I said, these people are utterly ugly. How the hell do I do in this? It's like my mind just kind of went like that, and I said, okay, well, boobs, I guess. And the model people came up something fairly close to what I did in the storyboard, but it was really amazing. And one of the things that they told me, because I had worked on TV animation and sometimes very unsuccessfully, I try to push it towards like the old Tex Avery squash and stretch kind of thing. And the results coming out of South Korea were horrifying in some cases. But they said, don't do that. We're treat these characters as though they're live action characters. Now they do weird things. I mean, when Bart's getting choked out, his mouth will go one way and his eyeballs will go the other. But generally, though, you're supposed to treat them, like a live action character would work, with weight and everything else like that. And so I loved it because it was the first time that I got a script that was funny to begin with, didn't have standards and practices, just chew it all to pieces. And I was able to add occasional little things, like in that same episode I was telling you about. Matt Groening complimented me because there was a scene between Milhouse and Bart in the playground, and so I put them in monkey bars, and I had Bart just hanging from his knees. So when you cut between them, it's upside down. And he said just that thing was like, they didn't even think of that, and I did, and they loved it. And but you know what? Since this is going out there, and I can correct something a little bit, my favorite episode was the Crepes of Wrath, and that's Bart as an exchange student, right?
Oh, yes.
And I worked with the director on the thing, and we kind of worked out what was going to happen in the third act. I put my heart into that thing. That, in fact, that they ended up animating more than they actually had on the TV show. They used some of the outtakes for the commercials. There was a whole thing where Bart was celebrated in France. He has a beret, and there's, Toulouse-Lautrec and the Eiffel Tower and everything going on in there. That was in the commercial for that. It's not on the actual episode. But in the very end, I didn't get any credit on it. And they said later, oh, well, it goes into like VHS or something like that, we'll make sure your name is it. Never happened. And then like years later, America's TV Guide came out with the top 10 television episodes of all time, and that episode of Simpsons was in there. I don't think it was number one, but it was pretty close, And I'm going, one of the top 10 shows ever on TV, and I didn't get I didn't get a credit on that.
Nice. Oh,
but that's the thing. That's the thing about what we're dealing though with. In animation, generally, they used to take everybody who ever worked on the show for the entire season, and that would be the credits at the end of because it would be the same credits every time. They've started getting towards more, and even putting the storyboard artist's name along with the writer at the beginning of the show, at the top of the show, above the line is what we call it, right? But in animation, maybe something like that will fall through the cracks. I think it fell through the cracks because they were trying to do just the people who were working on that show. But in film, we're at the producers, I'm going to call it the producer's whim. They have a discretion whether we get a credit or not, and I've worked on some big shows like Jumanji, the first one with Robin Williams, and I know my stuff is there. I saw it. I mean, I actually worked on the design for the Jumanji box that forms the opening credit, the opening thing. It's like it's a close up on the lid of this box.
Yeah,
and literally designed that, and this is something for all the board artists out there. This is one of the things. Well, any of our illustrators, any of the motion picture illustrators, it always comes down to do you want us to organize so that you get medical benefits and retirement benefits, or do you want us to put everything, on the line just to get you a mandatory credit? I don't know why it's a choice.
I was going to say, why is that a choice?
But that's collective bargaining. That's among everybody in all of the unions, like the editors and the even the theater projectionists. We all belong to the same umbrella union.
It's a weird world. Looking from the outside, it's a weird world. We've spoken to people on here before. They're like, "Yeah, I worked on that. I didn't get any credit for it though." And it's like, why? You worked on it. Why? It's.
Thank God for IMDb. I mean, I can go on and I can put down every credit I have, and anybody who wants to find out anything about me can see it. I might be behind now. There might be a couple of credits there I haven't updated yet.
Looking at your IMDb though, it's insane. Like the amount of incredible projects. But there was a few on there that really stood out to me. Anyone knows anything about me, I'm a big Batman fan, and you worked on Batman and Robin. I know that film gets a lot of slack, but I also, in my research, found out you almost got fired from that movie. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually I've gone over this a couple of times. I was worried about it after the fact, but there was no way I was going to get fired. Because the only person who saw this little drawing that I did for the entertainment of, the people in the room, essentially my other fellow artists over there. That saying, idle hands are the devil's playground.
Yeah.
It's kind of that, it's like, I'm there to work. I'm there to draw. And if you make me wait like 5 hours before giving me something to do, I'm going to find something to do. Even if it's just to entertain myself and my friends. Okay. And I could tell you the story. I could tell you what the I'm not going to tell you the beginning of the story. I'm going to tell you the end right now. I did a drawing that I had no intention of anybody but people in the room seeing, and it wasn't, like out of taste where people were naked body parts or covered in blood and feces. It wasn't anything like that. It was uncomplimentary. Okay. But it was at the level of like a humor magazine, like Mad Magazine, it was like that kind of jokey joke. I was never in any danger because luckily the guy that wanted a copy of my drawing, when he made a copy, I had not signed it. And he knew who drew it, but he didn't tell anybody. So he put me in trouble, but he also protected me. And the only person who objected to it was the costume designer. So the person who actually the joke was about, or was the target of the joke, never saw it. Maybe online they saw it, because this whole thing that you're talking about, this came from an interview I did online.
I know where I saw it. Yeah.
Right. And the first person I talked to, I was sharing, I even shared him the drawing itself, because I scanned it. Yeah, so that is the example that actually went online. Now, if anybody who saw that later, including somebody who wanted to make bones about it, it turned around really quick. It was like, oh, this is funny. And then the next person says, how dare you? Okay. So now I'm going to tell you the story. I was watching the night before I started working on Batman and Robin. I was watching the Academy Awards, and Alicia Silverstone came up as a presenter, and she looked like a big pink marshmallow. What she dressed was like taffeta going out. She come out like a pink puffball, right? No contour to her body whatsoever, you know? And I said, oh boy, somebody hasn't worked for a while. I don't know what's going on. I go into Batman and Robin the next day. And my first storyboard I needed to do was a scene that had Batgirl. And Alicia Silverstone was going to do Batgirl. Now I'm looking up at the wall, and somebody had already done a costume design. And you may see it online if you look up Miles Teves, Teves. And he did this like high fashion model Linda Evangelista body with 8-inch fuck me shoes, and essentially looking like a little bit like the Catwoman, Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman outfit, but with a cape, right?
Okay.
I'm looking at this and says, no fucking way Alicia Silverstone is going to look like this character. And so, well, okay, I'm just going by what the design is. So that's the character I used in my storyboard. Now, cut to, I hear that she is on set, or in the studio, and this is one of the few times I actually worked on the lot, right? Being corseted down so that they get measurements to build her costume for her. And that image was boom, right in my head. And I decided to draw it. Now, if I stuck to that and just let people assume something was going on other than what I had intended, I would be fine. But instead, I wrote clueless to the casting of Batgirl. And and it was fucking funny. I will not apologize for humor. All right.
No.
I didn't intend to take it over to Alicia Silverstone's dressing room and say, hey, look at this. And there was no social media at the time. It wasn't like I posted it and it was going to make its way around. The only people who saw that were the ones that were in the room, until somebody took it off the wall, made a color copy of it, replaced what it was on the wall, so that I didn't know anything about this until the person who took the thing told me the story later. Okay. And I'm saying, ooh, you almost got me fired.
Oh. But in fairness,
bad guy for fat shaming somebody. Okay. Now I'm a bad guy for fat shaming somebody. All right. A $1 million earning actress and me making my $2,000 a week. All right. The bad guy.
Fair, that clueless to the casting of Batgirl is one of the greatest jokes. Like, that made me laugh more than the picture did. It is fantastic. And it was quite a controversial casting back in the day, because like, she's coming off Clueless and characters like that. You're not thinking Batgirl, really? Like,
Joel Schumacher just fucked up that whole thing. I mean, he made the one before that with Batman Forever, and Val Kilmer was basically just, window dressing. It was all a Jim Carrey movie. Yeah. And people thought that that's how to make a Batman movie. No, that's how to make a Jim Carrey movie. The one they made after that, people said, ooh, and things like, right off the bat, jumping off on a skateboard from a plane going down a chimney, or throwing Robin into a pit and then jumping off and somehow being able to, without a jetpack, alter time, space, gravity, and reach somebody by falling faster than the person that you're trying to catch. all of these things were just horrible, you know. And I saw that movie all the way through only once, and that was in the cast and crew screening. I can't make it through 15 minutes of it.
As long as you get through that opening scene with all the ice dinosaur jokes, then you're good for the rest. That's all you need, is those ice puns.
You know what they wouldn't let me do? They wouldn't let me keep the old script, because I was working off of the script before they got Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they wouldn't tell me who it was, but I knew. I heard the rumors. I heard it was Patrick Stewart who was going to do Mr. Freeze. Now,
God.
They didn't acknowledge that, but I read his lines, and they were all semi-Shakespearean, you know, and it was like, you know, you fine fellows from the days of yore, and all that, you know. It's like, and it turned into all the bad puns after that, and I just amused myself by reading a little script in an Arnold Schwarzenegger accent, and it just killed me every time I did it, and to the point where I was annoying everybody around me, you know. And I wish I had that script, because that would still, I would actually charge people to have me read from that script. I think I could make some extra dough on that, you know.
Weirdly though, if in another movie, not in that movie, I could see Patrick Stewart pulling off that Mr. Freeze character, because it's a dark, tormented soul. I could see him pulling that off, to be fair.
You know, this came after the animated show, which did the best version on film of that. You know, you understand that character intimately based on that. He becomes, you know, a lot of pathos and stuff like that. But Schwarzenegger is playing it, you know, like the penny opera, you know, grand guignol, you know, and then any moment that he has, like, it's my wife, she got the, and they're like, you just had to say that, you know. That was just like, somehow I guess that filled up that space that they needed that 2 minutes in. I don't know what you know.
Yeah. All I see is the slippers and the "I'm Mr. White Christmas." That's all I see in my head when I think of Mr. Freeze. It's just. But speaking of, sorry,
stuff going on. There was the costume department wouldn't let us see what that character was doing, and I was working with a bunch of guys who were designing vehicles and props, and there was no connection about the design of one thing to the design of the other. There was so much wrong in that film. That was and I didn't work at all with Joel Schumacher. He didn't come in and talk to me or anything. I worked with John Dykstra, and I worked with Barbara Ling, the production designer, you know, and I heard later that he basically looks at the storyboards and, you know, says, okay, now I'll do a version of this. But, you know, it's like, it was just like a placeholder.
Yeah, because it has to be sort of, you know.
Yeah.
But
you know, do you feel badly about me now? Are you sorry now that I've fat shamed Elisa Silverstone, that, you know, is this ever going to air? You know,
I think as though you were having fun with your friends. It was never ha 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 ha. So, you know, if anyone in this world can say they have never taken the mick out of someone behind closed doors, they are lying. So
she wanted to get me back. All she had to do is show me her pay stub.
I was going to say, yeah, I think.
Yeah. Your pitch. Have fun on your job.
Look, fair play, Alicia. Fair play. But obviously Batman and Robin was a sequel to those other films, and you've worked on quite a few sequels: Son of Mask, X-Men: The Last Stand, Jurassic World. Do you find yourself approaching sequels a little differently? Because obviously there is other work already established in that.
No, because very often the sequels aren't anything like the originals. Jurassic World was like a retooling. I working on a Jurassic Park film was on my bucket list, and I thought, I'm never going to do this. It's, you know, it's been years. They did 4. I don't think they're ever going to do another one. and they basically had a different approach to it. Like, this was everything before was just like all the accidents that took place trying to make a theme park. And then they say, oh no, the theme park's made. Now here's what can go bad, Mask 2, not the same actor, not the same director. There was some problems, I think, conceptually all along. One of them being, this is technical, but the director kind of wanted to do wide angle lenses for everything. The wide angle lens lends itself to this more cartoony kind of thing where things are popping out and all that kind of deal. Auga, the eyeballs coming out toward, the whatever. And that's the fun part that intersperses the reality. And if you have the wide angle lens through the whole thing, it all looks like the same cartoon, But that being said, I did so much stuff, design work on that, as well as storyboarding work, that I see my work literally on screen quite a bit. I might watch that again just to pick out, all the background stuff and props and things that I did. I'm proud of what I did. I'm sorry that I actually got to storyboard a Busby Berkeley styled song and dance number. I said, why are you having me do this? Is it you get like a Broadway person or whatever, take a walk over to we were working in the city, go over to the Opera House. There's probably a choreographer over there that can do it. Says, no, you do it. Okay, fine.
I've never actually seen The Son of Massive Man. The only thing I know about that film is there is sperm with the mask head on it, and I was like, what on earth is happening in this film? Like,
well, I mean, the main thing is when you get to the main character, Jamie Kennedy, with the mask on, it's night and day what Jim Carrey could do with that makeup than what this guy could do. Jim Carrey was working that makeup.
Yeah.
The other actor was buried in it. It would if they had the money, they should have just CGI'd his face and just had it be an animated asset, because that would have been the only way to like save that performance. But hey, you know what? That's not my job.
No. You do what you're asked to do, and you do it well, sir. So that's all that counts.
You got to work on Mars Attacks as well. Mars Attacks, the original Super Mario Brothers, Day After Tomorrow, Scorpion King. Your list is, and you said Hawkeye, Thor. Like, your list is insane. You were talking about the friends you had that have got lists, but your list is incredible.
Yeah, I did. I had one thing before. I think this was before I got in the union, maybe. It was Terminator 2, and I worked on the trailer, the teaser trailer, and it was awesome. I worked with Stan Winston and Jim Cameron directly, and then I got hired by Stan Winston to work on practical effects that they were going to do to keep the digital stuff, to just what it does good. Just so he had a lot of things that were practical in there that where the melty Terminator 2 that where he's like partially like melted and everything else. Those are all appliances. Those are all things like that. And so I worked with him on a few of those. But then Jim Cameron's favorite board artist became available, and then they said bye-bye. But it was cool. I have some great, I didn't get to keep the artwork. I got preliminary. I got some Xeroxes I made. I actually went on the laser disc, and I did screen grabs. Was a laser disc or it was a DVD? I did screen grabs of my boards because it was in a supplemental material type of stuff, just so I had at least, even if it's low res, it's like 72 DPI. Now I have a set of them, you know.
That's
But,
cool to be saying, yeah.
But that's a touchstone. That's like, you know, that's up there with Star Wars, you know.
Mm.
I haven't worked on a Star Wars thing yet, but you know.
You've done a fair bit of work with Disney, so Star Wars is along the way, so it's got to happen at some point, no doubt.
Yeah, well, they own everything. It's hard to avoid
Exactly.
it.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. And like, you've done quite a lot of superhero projects. Like, talking of Disney and owning Marvel, like the whole MCU. Like, you started at the beginning on that, working on the Incredible Hulk, and then Secret Invasion most recently. When you worked on that first Hulk movie, did you anticipate what was gonna come? Like,
I was hoping. I didn't know that they were going to do the you know, the end credit things where Tony Stark shows up and all of that kind of stuff. I loved it. I loved the approach that they took to the Hulk. It wasn't kind of like that basic misunderstood monster kind of thing so much. They made him scary. I got to work on I taken an approach with the Hulk in this bottling plant. It would be like the same approach it would take with like Predator or Alien or something like that. You know, it was make you piss in fear is what I wanted to try and do, you know. And I think they did a really good job on that. And it's fun working on that. On DC stuff too, you know, it's not Batman not included, but I worked on you know, I've been asked to work on some stuff. I've worked on some stuff. You know, it's something that, I mean, there's bucket list of things I would like to do. I would love to do a Tarzan film, you know. I came close to doing a Conan film with the Scorpion King. You know, it's basic thing, same basic deal. It's in Egypt, but who cares, you know.
So,
I got courtroom, you know.
So you're talking then about DC Comics. Now, I said before we started this, there was a certain project I found out about where I discovered you. Mm-hmm. And you worked on probably one of the most famous projects that never happened. Superman Lives. You storyboarded the illustrious Fangarian Snare Beast. Like, what you
saw the Flash movie, right?
Yes. I was going to ask about that as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, did you know that was coming, or did you watch him and be like, holy shit, there it is?
Well, what I expected was like some background, you know, like stuff on a monitor or something like that. You know, I did not expect what I saw on the Flash movie. They didn't need my permission, by the way. They had the right to do it. They paid for it. I sent them the highest scan res I had of the artwork so that it, you know, but the way they used it almost like board artists, like you know, concept art and storyboard art, in which case they didn't really, you know, as long as you can see it, it would have been fine, you know. I didn't know if they were going to actually put something out there, you know? But yeah, I worked with John Peters. I was hired to design the giant, the famous giant spider that was in the Kevin Smith script. And if you've seen the making of Superman Lives or the death of Superman Lives, yes, they go into that quite a bit. You know, Kevin Smith explains it and everything else. But this was before Tim Burton was attached. Like, I never heard the name Tim Burton in there. I mean, Kevin Smith was still in meetings with us, you know, at least the one meeting. And and it was kind of weird. It was weird that I had to draw Superman, but they didn't want to have Superman in a Superman costume, because John Peters basically said that he took a picture of Superman out on the street, and then the homeboys or whoever, the way he made it sound like he went into the ghetto to get, you know, people playing pickup basketball in a shitty courtyard to describe how they felt about Superman. He may have just gone into a mall and talked to some kids. I don't know. But his thing basically was that Superman was gay because he was wearing tights. That was basically it. and that Batman is cool because he's Batman, I guess, but he has like leather and he's all in black. So I ended up doing Superman dressed in like his outfit that he comes back to life again after the Superman the Death of Superman arc that DC did, right? Because that's where the genesis was essentially, and I still think they should do Brainiac. The animation shows do Brainiac very well, and they've yet to. How many different Lex Luthors have we seen? We've never seen Brainiac, which is one of his top 2 bad guys. I put him, way up there.
It's
and so I did some background stuff. I did the interior of the spaceship that looks like a big weird spider web if it were done in like resin and Tinker Toys. If you know what the Tinker Toys are, like just hard rods with a little bit of goo or something holding them together. Looked pretty good, I did a lighting thing where you don't see the spider all together at the same time. John Peters wanted to have a moment before the first fight happens where I know he wants to use another word. He used the word Yanni. This Yanni opens up. Let's call it a vagina because that's what he meant.
Okay.
And all these small spiders fall down on Superman and just cover him. Okay, and I did that. I boarded that sequence. And the keyframe I did, I think it's still one of my best because I borrowed heavily from H.R. Geiger on that one. And I think it came out pretty creepy. But in the end, when I showed them all these designs based on real spiders and stuff, because they actually sent me to a library, a motion picture library that had all this great reference stuff. His response was, "This looks like something I ate at sushi today." I'm assuming it's a fried shrimp head or whatever, And so, of course, he wants to have like a human head kind of deal. Like Brainiac's head or something. It says, "Oh yeah, so yeah, we're more scared of human heads than spiders these days." Yeah. What? You are a fucking creep, But anyway, that's just basically. I said I already did what I wanted to do. I'll do it. Pay me another $1,000. Okay, I'll do that.
Oh, I'm so gutted this project never happened because it sounded like the most clusterfuck wonderful movie of all time.
Well, I mean, I had to laugh when I saw the Tim Burton designs of like his spider. It was basically Brainiac is the head in a cloak, and then when you open up the cloak, it's these spider legs that go down like 6 feet or whatever. And I'm going, yeah, fuck you, John Peters. That's what you're gonna get. That's your spider. You like your spider? It's got a on it.
So weird. Because I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan, so I'm always naturally want to hear about this project because it just fascinates me. But yeah, when that came up watching The Flash, and then I saw that you did the design for it, I was like, I gotta find out more about the Fangarian Snare Beast.
Yeah, obviously there is no backstory in that Flash thing,
No.
And it's they had one thing that I didn't have. I didn't have a clear reference of the costume. This way before they even started getting in on the costume kind of deal, and I think I knew it was Nick Cage, but I didn't draw Nick Cage. I went through that once before. Nick Cage was supposed to be the star of the first Jumanji, and I drew every single one of my drawings. And it was only after I'd been off the show that I heard about Robin Williams taking his place. So nothing I drew looked like a character.
Oh, it was supposed to be Nicolas Cage and not Robin Williams in Jumanji.
Yes.
That's a whole different movie.
Well, the crazy part would have really came across as crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God. That's a version I need to see. Like, what? You just blow my mind there.
All the roles you've had though over the span of your career so far, Tim, like I imagine, did you have to audition for stuff, or did you get calls and people be like, "Oh, I know someone who could do that. I know somebody who could do that."
That's kind of how things work. I mean, when I first got into the business, it was referrals basically. That's how I got into working in animation, and of course, work speaks for itself. I mean, I don't have to audition. All my work I can just show you.
Well, yeah.
Here, draw something for us.
That's
Draw a duck. Here's a turtle. Oh, we don't like that turtle. You can go away.
Here's a spider with a human head.
Yeah. So, but I did get an agent that helped me eventually get movie. At first they were non-union things like the Super Mario Brothers and a few other things. And then eventually Stargate, I got on Stargate. That turned union after I left, but I put in 30 days, which was, and I, to the day too, 30 working days. And so I was union eligible. So I ended up working on different things. Like, I think I wasn't even in the union yet. I worked on, oh shit! It was a Charlie Sheen movie called it was about parachuting. There's a certain thing where you hit a velocity, terminal velocity. It's like it's certain, yeah. It's where you hit a speed that your parachute won't save you anymore. Falling. And anyway, I met him and Tasha Kinski, and here's one of the shows. I mean, the fun things like working in comic books, working in animation and stuff like that. The more fun the job, the worse they treat you. The least you get paid, and and so as the best I got treated anywhere is working on a commercial. Because they'll feed you, you get more money per hour than any other job that you work, and but when working in TV and film, it was like, wow, this is awesome, and you meet great people, other people that like the same things you like, and you get to see how they work, you learn from them, maybe they learn from you, it's all. I learned techniques with markers working on that Batman movie, working with people. I didn't know that you could take, the refill bottles for markers that you would normally just fill up the markers, but you could just use that on a big wad of cotton balls and just make your own big wide marker nib and just do a full wash on something and not show all those little lines that you get when you do it with take a little alcohol and you can pull out the color, and create effects that way, so I learned a bunch of stuff, working in the same room with a lot of different artists.
I can imagine over the years as technology and techniques and stuff have changed, like the job now must be so different to when you first started.
It is in a lot of different ways. In animation, they've got the pipeline is now something called Storyboard Pro, done by a company called Toon Boom. And in TV animation, that's basically everybody has to work with that because that's the pipeline. That's you do the work there, and then that's how it's consumed or whatever by the production company, right? And it's the drawing tool is horrible, I have to admit. I have a friend who works in it in live action, and he has a great little system, I think, because he only does his thumbnails, his roughs, with this really crappy drawing tool in it. then you can export it into some other thing like Photoshop or whatever, and do a nice digital drawing over that, and then rename it exactly what it was, and Toon Boom will put it and replace the one that was there before. So you can take out the crap, put it back in, and it replaces the crap.
That's clever.
I wouldn't be doing that, but it's one of those things where it's, to learn I took 2 classes using their version of it. I have like an old version that only works on super old computers, and but you have to pay, you have to pay a subscription. And it's like, if I'm not working in animation, I'm not paying you for this. In fact, if I ever work on animation, show me how to get in and out of that, and I won't even, but they're doing a lot of extra stuff though, because they're doing animatics and everything else that I wouldn't had to do when I was working storyboards for animation. And of course, everything is digital. There is no such thing as turning in hard copies anymore. There's a contract in both Universal and Disney. I may have been amended, I don't know, but it's like all the all your materials up to and including the storyboards, you're supposed to just hand them over to them. I'm saying, well, I've got a digital thing now. You want me to delete my computer? No, fuck you.
What happens to those old storyboards? Do you ever get to keep any of them, or are they literally just in some storage locker somewhere in Hollywood with about 7 passcodes on it?
Oh, what they do, they may give them away. There was a moment a long time ago before I joined the union where MGM, major studio, was like sold for the land, I think, to build condos and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if it was because of that, but they had a big purge going into all their storage rooms of stuff that they had done, movies, classic movies, Hitchcock movies, all these kind of things, all this artwork that was produced and was just laying in storage. They threw it away. They were all in like these bins, and some artist went by and said, "Holy shit, they're throwing it away." And then he made phone calls to all the people he knew that were in there, and to the Art Directors Guild and the at that time 790, which was the mad art illustrators and mad artists, and say, "Come in and grab this stuff, save it. I don't know how much was thrown away and never recovered, but a lot of that original stuff was saved from the trash."
Nuts. They probably could have afforded to pay for another building with the amount of money they could make off that with some movie collectors. But that's nuts.
Yeah, I don't know if there was even a market, for movie memorabilia, but I mean, they would sell like the Star Trek, captain's chair for millions of dollars. But there's the paintings and drawings and stuff that survived, like maybe from Edith Head, for the costumes and stuff like that. They're artifacts of their history. They're basically, worth a lot of money. And the fact that they threw away so much of it, I guess, makes it more valuable. I don't know. But I have a lot of stuff that I worked on, but I have to be careful if I want to sell it, because the studios still consider it theirs. They don't miss it. They don't even acknowledge that it exists to the moment that it goes on auction or something like that, And I've sold some stuff before. I mean, it's when I was working on the Batman and Robin stuff, I essentially took the pencil drawings I did, and because they had the old Canon color copier, or even a good black and white copier, I would make copies and then I would color those, because I had all the time in the world, instead of getting into mischief, I went ahead and made color storyboards, which is what you don't do in live action, but I went ahead and did that. And so I had the pencils, and then I ended up having both versions, but somebody wanted to have the pencils, the original, the hand done type of thing. So great, now every once in a while I may see 1 or 2 pages of that on, because my name is attached to it. Somehow, I will see eBay or something like that. It pops up there, and I'm expecting a phone call. Did you steal that?
I mean,
Do you think that happens
with the recent strikes going on at the moment? Like, has that affected work going forward currently? Because obviously, I know the Writers Guild have just won theirs after 5 months, but I mean, going forward, I imagine is things slowed up a little bit at the moment?
It's still slow. A lot of projects that I wasn't working on, but I know people. They're including Marvel movies, have stopped production. In anticipation of the actor strike. I think some of them stopped production because there were like shows that were like TV shows that they couldn't continue doing them because nobody was writing the next episode or whatever. They can go and go into pre-production. Everybody involved in pre-production, other than the writers, we're not on strike. We're sympathetic and we support them, but the Writers Guild is a separate organization, and so is SAG. So are the actors. So there might be some shows that are beginning to get prepped, and hopefully even before the actors settle, maybe I'll get hired on something in pre-production, because I usually get hired before the actors are ever cast, unless they're attached, like Samuel L. Jackson, because he plays a specific character. But other than that, I don't even know what the characters look like because the actors haven't been cast yet. So I just go for a generic hero person or leading lady person, but the actors, they actually, to produce film and television, you need the actual actors. And so, if they're not sure when they're going to be available, it quite often, it's like a lot of the money that is spent on films is borrowed money. And you don't want to pay people like myself, like in one fiscal, quarter or whatever, and then have to wait and pay interest until until you want to be able to go bang, 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 have that as condensed as possible, so that sooner than later you can get your money from, all the rights and presentation of the film and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, so there's a big money thing involved with that. And if if you don't know when the actors are going to be finished, or going to come back. So for television and other things, I guess, or for streaming shows and all of that kind of stuff, especially streaming shows, that's part of the whole problem right now. They're not getting paid for the streaming shows that are very popular, that they're not getting residuals, So I'm hoping, and in a weird way, this also involves animation, because you have voice actors that are also, until they decide to make a lot of silent animated shows.
Go back to the old days of old silent movies.
Screen with the word.
Tim, honestly, I could ask you a billion questions about all the amazing projects you've worked on, but before we let you out of here, just when you're looking back on your career, when you're doing these storyboards, has there ever been a moment where you're drawing it, you've looked at it and you've gone, I cannot wait to see what this looks like on the big screen? Are any of those like particular moments that stood out to you?
Oh, there's a lot of them. I mean, there's some fun stuff that go right towards what I like to do. I mean, we talked about the Hulk. I thought the Hulk was going to be awesome. The way, because I wasn't so much a big Hulk comic book fan, but I watched the TV show on and all these other things, and I'm thinking this is the right way to do it. This is going to be very awesome. And Terminator 2, obviously, I was a big fan of the original Terminator. I have to pinch myself saying I got to work in the workroom, Stan Winston's workroom, and he had full cast versions of all the monsters he's worked on for all these different, so predators all over the place, and it was just freaking awesome, So yeah, there's the certain movies that I'm really looking forward to. Jurassic World, big thing, bucket list. I get to draw dinosaurs. Couldn't be better than that. That would probably be number one. Jurassic World.
That's amazing. Well, we're all kids at heart, isn't it? Like after the massive successful career you've had, like, what was your favorite moment? I got to draw dinosaurs.
I got to draw dinosaurs. You know what? If I get to draw a monster, I'm doing something right. It's if I'm drawing a car chase, it's a job. But unless a monster is chasing the car, and then oh hell yeah.
Which is driving after a dinosaur.
It was like a Godzilla film, by the way. So I did a little version of King Kong and Godzilla on the same thing. It's like a throwaway, like video game based thing, but hell of a lot of fun.
Mr. Stevens, do you have any more questions for our wonderful guest?
I do. When you first started drawing as a young'un, and you started, finding your way and getting into comics and everything, did you ever think that this is where your life would be today? Did you ever think you'd have worked on all these massive films and TV shows, etc.? Oh,
because there was the best you could get back then was like the Ray Harryhausen, like 1 million years BC kind of thing. You couldn't. There was no budget. There was no way. I never thought movies would get to where they were. I think the best I thought I could do is do comic books, and I was only barely kind of aware that somebody was drawing things for animation. I knew it was animated drawings, but I'm thinking, how can that one person draw all that? It's I didn't know how it worked at all. It was like, yeah, I know you go here and there's here and then there's here and then it's something. I didn't know that there's a whole lot of people working on the same thing. It was very dense. It was like you saw the product. You didn't really see what went on behind it. I think the closest I could say was, okay, if I drew what I'm drawing, if it were good enough, you can actually print it. And that's the best. But storyboarding, design work for movies, no, I didn't even know those jobs existed. And I didn't know that they would ever get to the point where you have like Star Wars and superhero movies and all that kind of stuff. It was, monster movies were either guys in makeup or wearing rubber suits and stomping on small models of buildings,
Yeah.
It's mad to think how far the world of film and television has come over these years. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, you could find out. I mean, sometimes, until everything went streaming, you bought a DVD or a Blu-ray, and they'll show you how it works. They'll show you how they made it. God, you know what? It's if I had that back then, maybe I would have gotten out of the house and stopped bothering my parents. Much.
Tim, before we let you get out of here, any plug social medias, websites, anything you want people to go to?
Well, I don't know when this is coming out. I'm definitely going to be talking on 2 different panels for Lightbox Expo. It's a design expo for artists and people who love, art for animation, film, and gaming. And that's in Pasadena, next week, like not this weekend, but the weekend after. And and if you go on Vimeo, you can look up some of the panels that I've had the pleasure of moderating with a lot of other people who work in the film industry. And you probably would I think you would have to go to ADG at Comic-Con, and they should come up, illustrators panel, but I would check out that and the production designers panel too, because you'll learn a lot and you'll hear directly from the people who worked on those big films. And that's because I'm not selling anything.
Yeah,
sell my time, that's basically it. I'm donating time to you guys, but I sell my time.
and
That's appreciated.
Yeah, very much so. We've barely scratched the surface on your amazing career. It'd be great to have you back on again one day in the future and talk a bit more, because, like I said, one hell of a career, my friend.
Well, thank you.
Tim, thank you so much for taking the time out to just sit and chat to us today. We've really, really enjoyed it. Like Jamie said, we've hardly really got into anything. We've hardly scratched the surface, so we'd love to have you back again in the future.
All right, well, check out those Vimeos. Maybe you will have different questions.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
How could you?
Phenomenal. Tim, thank you so much, my friend. It means the world.
Okay, thanks. All right, bye.
Take care, sir.
Cheers.
Yeah, bye-bye.
What an incredible, eye-opening conversation. Nicolas Cage was supposed to be in Jumanji. I still cannot wrap my fucking head around that fact.
Could you imagine when he was doing the storyboard? I was like, yeah, cool, lovely. Well, good luck with the film. And then went to watch it and went, wait, hang on a second. That's Robin Williams. Wait, I thought you said Brian. Where's Nick Cage? Yeah, it's crazy. That I think we both just went, Joe? Yeah. At the same time, like nuts. That would have been amazing though. But I think because we're so used to Robin being the main character, it's hard to differentiate away and be like, oh, Nick Cage, why? But if it'd been Nick Cage, then you wouldn't have thought any differently, would you? So
no.
But Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to sit and chat to us. It was absolutely amazing. We loved it. We barely scratched the surface, so hopefully we can have you come back on again. But we really hope that you all enjoyed listening to it as much as we did recording it.